everybody, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be going through a list of 15 popular fantasy authors that I have never read. And I think it begs the question, how can you consider yourself a fantasy reader if there are as many as 15 authors that you have never read before? I mean, can you even really consider yourself a fantasy reader at that point? You know, that is the question. But I thought it would be just sort of fun to do a quick little list video with you guys. And instead of letting you know which authors I've read, which is boring, I thought I would let you know which authors I haven't read. And then I would wait to hear from you guys in the comments what you think about that. And, you know, which ones I should read, in what order, you know, just have a little fun. Have a little fun, a nice lighthearted video for today. So the first one that I'm going to talk about, and these are in no particular order, is Fond du Lis. Now, Fond du Lis, I know, has written a series. It's a series of 3 books. It starts with Jade City. I actually happen to have a copy of Jade City, but I haven't read it yet. And I don't know if I'm going to get to it this year because, as I've said in one of my previous videos, probably the one you're going to see before this one, that I am prioritizing the book club challenge that I'm doing this year. So I don't think that Jade City actually made it onto the book club prompt challenge list. So I don't know if I'm going to be getting to Jade City this year or not, but I do have it. It's on my TBR cart. I hear that Fond du Lis is an excellent epic fantasy writer. And as you guys know, if you've been here a minute, I always compare my fantasy authors to my absolute favorite summum mecca of authors, Robin Hobb, who I love beyond words, and I think has pretty much ruined me for all other fantasy authors, which is sad because it tends to disappoint me when I read other authors that are not to that caliber. So I don't know actually if any of these authors are good or not, and that's why I need your guys' participation in the comments to let me know if I'm missing out on some really good ones. So basically, if you've read Robin Hobb and you know that the authors that I'm mentioning can give me that same totally immersive 5-star experience, then definitely let me know. So again, Fond du Lis, haven't read, but I do own one of her books and I'm intending to read it ASAP. The next author that I've never read before, Brandon Sanderson. I know you guys, I know. This is an author whose name I have seen on every bookshelf and every bookstore throughout my entire 20+ year fantasy reading career. And I know that I said that I've been out of the book reading loop for a while. I couldn't really delve myself too much into series as my kids were growing up because it was a question of time and, you know, working and all those things. But now my youngest baby is about to sort of quote unquote leave the nest. I mean, she's not leaving the nest, she's 17, but you know, like I have a lot more time for myself right now because she's grown up and she's doing her things, and I can really devote a lot more time to reading than I used to be able to in the past. So Brandon Sanderson, what is the reason that I have not read Brandon Sanderson yet? It's probably to do with I don't know where to begin.
Editing Zahava here. I actually do know the reason that I haven't read Brandon Sanderson, and it is because at some point in my late 20s or early 30s, according to my current Goodreads reading list, I did try and read Elantris and I gave it 1 star. So obviously there was something in the first, let's say 40 pages that didn't resonate with me. And I don't remember actually ever finishing the book, and probably I ended up DNFing it. So maybe it's time to give it another shot. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
I don't know where to begin because I know that there are so many works that he has out there. I'm not even sure if you have to read certain books in order. I don't know if they have a shared universe or not. I tend to like to read books in publication order. But sometimes if you read a book in publication order, if it's a debut novel or something along those lines, the writing is a little weaker, so it could tend to turn you off. For example, in the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, you don't need to read the Farseer trilogy in order to read the Liveship Traders trilogy. You could definitely read the Liveship Traders trilogy not having read the Farseer trilogy and get just as rich of an experience. So when I look at other fantasy authors who I'm unfamiliar with, I don't actually know where to begin. And I don't know if maybe I don't like one series or will I like the other ones? So for example, with Robin Hobb, the Soldier Son trilogy, not one of her best works. I read through it. It took me some time. I had to really trudge through that one. It was not one of her best works. It was not. But I read it because I'm devoted to the author, and I didn't like it as much as the other series. So in the case of Brandon Sanderson, I don't know if I do, let's say, I think he does Mistborn series, I think. If I start with that one, am I going to like any of the other ones? Or if I start with any of the other ones, do I need to read those in order to go back to, I don't know. I just find that like he's written so many books that I don't even know where to start or if there are some standalone series. So I'm counting on you guys for your guys' help for like pretty much all of these authors that I haven't read. Okay. The next one is Scott Lynch. Now, this one I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I know that Scott Lynch has written The Lies of Locke Lamora, which I hear talked about on BookTube, on Bookstagram, on Book Talk. I hear people talking about The Lies of Locke Lamora. I want to tell you guys that maybe about 15 years ago, I did pick up a mass market paperback copy of The Lies of Locke Lamora, and I may have read about 40 pages in and I DNF'd that book. Now, I don't know if that's because of where I was mentally at the time. Maybe I was just emotionally exhausted or just way too physically tired, or for whatever reason at that time, I actually DNF'd that book. But I hear so many people talking about it nowadays on BookTube that I'm starting to wonder if I should pick it up again, because I did not have a good time with that book. I felt maybe it was because I had just finished reading Live Ship Traders series at the time, which by the way, I've read about 6 or 7 times in total. So I think that probably after reading Robin Hobb, I just didn't, I don't know, it wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't resonating with me at the time. So I guess my question to you guys is, do you think I should be giving this one another chance? Just know that I'm not going to be running to the bookstore to pick this one up, you know, but if it happens to appear in my life somehow, either at a thrift store or like a garage sale, someplace where I don't have to delve in a lot of money, maybe I'll pick it up on Audible or something like that. But is it worth my trying to read again? So let me know in the comments. Okay, I have also never read Robert Jordan. I mean, can you even call yourself a fantasy reader if you have never read Robert Jordan? That's a good question. But I know he is the author of the Wheel of Time series, and I think, again, the reason that I'm not reading Robert Jordan is because I don't even know how many books are a part of that series, but when something gets to be more than 3 books, that's asking for a lot of commitment from me, okay? I don't know that I can commit to that kind of an adventure. I think that Elizabeth Hayden, in her Rhapsody, the Symphony of Ages series, I think around about book 4 or book 5, The Assassin King, something like that, that's when she lost me. I like a good trilogy. I like a beginning, a middle, and an end. But when it starts to go off, I think Anne Rice did the same thing to me after in the Vampire Chronicles. She just went to town with it. She just went to town. And I lost interest by then. So I think I'm not reading Robert Jordan because Robert Jordan has like, I don't even know how many books. I'll put it across the screen, but there's definitely more than 3. I kind of max out at 3. Haven't read Robert Jordan because I'm not sure that I can commit myself to that, especially when you have the disadvantage, and in this case I think it's a disadvantage, of having all of the books already be published, because you know that they're there waiting for you. There's no waiting period to wait and see when the next installment of the story is going to come out, so you don't have any respite. There's no like peace in your brain that you can sit and forget, and you know, absence making the heart grow fonder, start to miss the story. And yes, you might say to me in the comments, well, you could always just not pick up the second copy or the third copy and just wait a little bit in between. But like, honestly, who does that? Of course I'm going to pick up the second copy right away. It's there, you know? So anyway, that's what I have to say about Robert Jordan. Okay, the next author that I have never read, and you guys, I'm almost embarrassed to be putting out this video, but the next author that I have never read is Terry Pratchett of the Discworld saga series. Now, as I understand, Discworld is something that has, if I'm not mistaken, a whole bunch of related novels that are not related. Like, I think that I read somewhere, and I could be totally wrong, so you can correct me in the comments, but I believe that Discworld is a world, it's a series of books where like there's a whole bunch of different characters, but like each character has their own book, but it's all kind of in the same universe, I think. So that could be kind of cool if that's what it is, because then you're not regurgitating the same story over and over, and it's just like different perspectives and different lenses of things that are going on in the same universe, and maybe characters will cross over from one book to another. So if that is the case, as I have come to understand it with the Discworld series, then I think I could potentially get behind that. So it's just one of those ones where I just haven't picked up Terry Pratchett because I think I was intimidated when I went to the bookstore and was in the fantasy section, and I saw probably about 12 books at that time, and that was like in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and already there were a lot of books out. And so of course your girl who maxes out mentally at 3, maybe 4 books in the case of the Rain Wilds Chronicles, I can't really get past that. So probably what happened was I got scared and didn't want to start the Terry Pratchett journey because I'd already seen umpteen books in the bookstore, and I was like, nah, I can't commit. I can't commit to that. All right, the next one that I have on my list is Guy Gabriel Kay, and that one I'm actually going to be a leg up on because I have never read Guy Gabriel Kay. I do have a copy of Tagana, and I am going to be checking off a box on the book challenge this year by reading Tagana, so I'm going to get to that eventually, but I haven't read any Guy Gabriel Kay yet. I will be reading Tagana this year. I will let you know how that goes. So, haven't read this author yet, but I'm getting there. Then I have Steven Erikson. Okay, I have never read Steven Erikson. Steven Erikson is another really popular fantasy author that has a 10-book series out there for the same reason that I haven't read any of the other books that are going on, like Robert Jordan or anything like that. 10 books, way too much for me. If you guys have read and you can tell me that I can only read like a certain amount of the books, do I have to stick with the whole series? Do I have to read the whole thing through? Obviously not, but it's just like I have this huge fear. It's like swimming in a lake versus swimming in an ocean. When I have a trilogy, I can manage the capacity of a trilogy. When I'm starting to think about a 10-book series, that to me is like the vastness of space. I can't wrap my head around it. I feel like it's like a marriage. It's like a marriage, and I've been married twice, and I don't know if I want to commit to a third marriage. I don't think I can do it. So I haven't read Steven Erikson. I don't know what the writing style is. I have read George R.R. Martin. That is another author whose epic scope of fantasy I really appreciate. And I don't think we're going to be seeing books from George R.R. Martin anytime soon. I don't think he's going to be finishing A Song of Ice and Fire anytime soon. That's been sort of the conceit's been going around the internet for the last decade, but we're waiting, aren't we? We're waiting. And actually, I think with The Song of Ice and Fire, if I'm being honest, I gave up on that just because he is not putting books out. So, you know, c'est la vie, right? Classic fantasy author that I haven't read, Ursula Le Guin. Not sure why. I think that some books that have been published really early on at the dawning of the fantasy genre, I kind of equate to being Tolkien-esque, and I think that I'm totally probably misjudging Ursula Le Guin because she probably doesn't write anything like Tolkien, but because they were like earlier vintage fantasy, and I really, sorry internet, don't like Tolkien. I find him very long-winded, and reading The Hobbit was enough for a lifetime. So I've never read Lord of the Rings. I did watch the movie, but I don't know. Like I think maybe because I read The Hobbit in the 6th grade and it was one of those forced assigned readings from your English teacher in class that it turned me off. And because Ursula Le Guin was sort of next to Tolkien on the shelf, I don't know. My teenage brain did weird things. And for some reason, I guess I've just avoided old school fantasy writers like Mercedes Lackey and Ursula Le Guin and things like that. So maybe I'm making a huge mistake. Let me know in the comments if I should be picking up any of her books. Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman. Okay, so I have never read any Neil Gaiman either. Are you guys starting to find a trend here? I don't know why it is. I think I'm just afraid that I'm not going to like these authors. Okay, so I know that Neil Gaiman is the author of American Gods, and I know that they have turned that into a TV series, and I'm very likely to watch that TV series. I just don't know if I want to read the novels. Again, it is a question of a big commitment, but maybe I'm wondering if I shouldn't actually break my own law and start with a YA Neil Gaiman instead of going headfirst into the adult novels, because I do know that Neil Gaiman writes some novels for adults, some for YA or even kids, and maybe it would behoove me to pick up one of his books that would be an easier, lighter read and kind of get an idea for the writing style. So I don't know, Neil Gaiman, I don't know if there's a massive difference between his YA and adult novels. If you guys are familiar with his writing, let me know what you think would be a good place to start from. Should I start directly with an adult novel, or should I sort of get my feet wet with something that is YA a little younger, or you know, maybe they're very different or maybe they're very similar. I don't know. Again, never read Neil Gaiman. He made it onto this list. The next popular fantasy author that I have never read before is Raymond E. Feist. I can just imagine you guys in the comments, like all of the viewers, if you haven't clicked away from the video by now, you guys are probably cringing right now. But I have never read Raymond E. Feist, who, as you guys are aware, is the author of the Rift War saga. So that is somebody that I kept saying, oh, maybe I will get to eventually. Just never got there. Don't know if he's any good. Don't know what type of novel to expect. Waiting to hear your comments on that one. So the next fantasy author that I have never read is John Gwynne. Now, I am super excited to pick up John Gwynne's books. I think he has 2 or 3 series out right now, and they are getting fantastic reviews from everybody on BookTube and everybody on BookTok and Bookstagram and everyone who reads fantasies. So there's not really much to say except that I'm waiting for the prices of his books to come down a little bit, to be a little more affordable to me, especially considering that I have a TBR cart that's got like 50 or 60 books, and I have this book club challenge that I'm taking part in for this year. So I don't know exactly when I'm going to get around to John Gwynne books, but what I do want to ask you guys is, if you have read John Gwynne books and if you are a big fan of them, which books should I start with? Do I have to start with the Faithful and the Fallen series, or can I start with the current and most popular Bloodsworn trilogy? Let me know which one I can start with, because sometimes I don't know if these universes are connected or if you have to definitely read the first an original series that the author comes out with, or if you can just skip ahead to the next one. So does reading order really matter? Is it 2 completely separate universes? Let me know for John Gwynne, and also for any of the other authors that I've mentioned that I've been scared to read because of the massive amounts of works that they put out. The next author on this list is Brian Jacques of the Redwall series. I have never read his books. Again, this is a fantasy author that I have no experience with. I don't know anything about the universe, the world, whether the writing is good or not. But I will say that the cover of The Wall I've seen in bookstores many, many times. It has that little mouse on it. It looks super duper cute. So I have been wanting to pick up that book, but again, I don't know, my life just didn't take me in that direction. So Brian Jacques, not an author I'm familiar with. Curious to know what you guys think of him. Now, as a fantasy reader, I am a super huge fan of dragons in my stories, so it will probably surprise you guys to learn that I have never read Anne McCaffrey before, of the Dragon Rider series. So again, I think it has to do more with the fact that she was one of the more, I want to say, vintage fantasy writers, and I guess whatever my trajectory was way back when I started reading fantasy about 15 to 20 years ago, you would think it would be a natural sort of development for me to come across Anne McCaffrey's books at some point, and I'm sure that I have many times at thrift stores, but I've just never picked it up. And for somebody that does appreciate a good dragon or two in her novels, I don't know why I never picked it up. I guess it's just one of those things. Number 14 on this list is Naomi Novik. And I realized that Naomi Novik is probably a more modern fantasy writer. Not that she writes modern fantasy, but she's a more, the word I should really use is more contemporary. And I know that Naomi Novik is the author of Uprooted, which is a book that I have been wanting to read. It's definitely on my TBR, but I don't actually own a copy of that. Although I did hear some other booktubers talking about it, and it's going to be on my hit list of books to read. I didn't realize actually that she had so many books out there, because I'd only heard people talking about Uprooted, and that's why it kind of surprised me, because this is an author that apparently is extremely established that I have just never read. I've never read hers. So I would like to get my hands on a copy of Uprooted, but I have to do some more research to figure out like what her whole bibliography is and where to start and that kind of thing. But I will definitely be listening to you guys on this point as well. And the last popular fantasy author that I have never read is Joe Abercrombie. And as I understand, Joe Abercrombie has quite a few series out there. Again, it is a question of there's too much choice. I don't know where to begin. I am completely naive. Short of spending an entire week on Wikipedia researching everybody's published works and where to start and reading orders and things like that, I think that after 15 or 20 minutes of doing that, I would probably be super overwhelmed, super saturated. There's so many books there on this planet that you cannot possibly read them all, although I tip my hat to anyone who tries. And there's just so much out there. There's so much being published. There's so much that's going on that I get overwhelmed. I honestly, I find myself in a situation of analysis paralysis, and I can't decide which of these authors to, let's say, try and which ones to sort of keep pushing until a later date, such as Terry Pratchett or Brian Jacques or Robert Jordan, which are authors that I have clearly been putting off reading for quite some time right now. So I don't know. Tell me what you guys think about the fact that I consider myself a fantasy reader and have never read any of these 15 authors. There are, of course, some that I've already mentioned that I have in my TBR cart, like physically have them. Guy Gabriel Kay, which I physically have, Fonda Lee, which I physically have, and these are, you know, and as far as John Gwynne is concerned, I have my eye on you. I'm waiting for your books to go on sale because I'm really looking forward to reading you, and you, John Gwynne, you will probably be next. You will probably be next. You will beat out all of the other authors that I have mentioned here, save for the books that are already on my TBR cart. So anyway, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and listening to my confession of all of the fantasy authors that I have never read. I really appreciate you being kind and gentle in the comments and steering me in the right direction for who I should read next and why. And if you haven't done it already, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you again in the next one. Ciao for now.